I had not been biased in hiring a handicapped person, but his placement counselor assured me that he would be a good and reliable busboy. But I had never had a mentally handicapped employee and wasn't sure I wanted one. I wasn't sure how my customers would react to Stevie. He was short, a little dumpy with the smooth facial features and thick-tongued speech of Down syndrome. I wasn't worried about most of my trucker customers because truckers don't generally care who busses tables as long as the meatloaf platter is good and the pies are homemade. The four-wheeler drivers were not the ones who concerned me. Rather, it was the mouthy college kids traveling to school and the yuppie snobs who secretly polished their silverware with their napkins for fear of some dreaded truck stop germ. The pairs of white-shirted businessmen on expense accounts who think every truck stop waitress wants to be flirted with. I knew those people would be uncomfortable around Stevie, so I closely watched him for the first few weeks. I should not have worried. After that first week, Stevie had my staff wrapped around his stubby little finger, and within a month, my truck regulars had adopted him as their official truck stop mascot. After that, I really didn't care what the rest of the customers thought of him. He was like a 21-year-old in blue jeans and Nikes, eager to please, eager to laugh, but fierce in his attention to his duties. Every salt and pepper shaker was exactly in its place. Not a breadcrumb or coffee spill was visible when Stevie got done with the table. Our only problem was persuading him to wait to clean a table until after the customers were finished. He would hover in the background, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, scanning the dining room until the table was empty. Then he would scurry to the empty table and carefully bust the dishes and glasses onto the cot, and meticulously wipe the table up with a practiced flourish of his rag. If he thought a customer was watching, his brow would pucker with added concentration. He took pride in doing his job exactly right, and you had to love how hard he tried to please each and every person he met. Over time we learned he lived with his mother, a widow who was disabled after repeated surgeries for cancer. They lived on their Social Security benefits in public housing 2 miles from the truck stop. Their social worker, which stopped to check on him ever so often, admitted they had fallen between the cracks. Money was tight, and what I paid him was probably the difference between being able to live together and Stevie being sent to a group home. That's why my restaurant was a gloomy place that morning last August, the first morning in 3 years that Stevie missed work. He was at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester getting a new valve or something put in his heart. His social worker said that people with Down syndrome often had heart problems at an early age, so this wasn't unexpected, and there was a good chance he would come through the surgery in good shape and be back at work in a few months. A ripple of excitement ran through the staff later that morning when word came that he was out of surgery, in recovery, and doing real fine. Franny, my head waitress, let out a war whoop and did a little dance in the aisles when she heard the good news. Bell Ringer, one of our regular trucker customers, stared at the sight of the 50-year-old grandmother of 4 doing a victory shimmy beside his table. Franny blushed, smoothed her apron, and shot Bell Ringer a withering look. He grinned. "Okay, Franny, what was that all about?" he asked. "We just got word that Stevie's out of surgery and going to be okay." I was wondering where he was. I had a new joke to tell him. What was the surgery about? Franny quickly told Bell Ringer and the other two drivers sitting at his booth about Stevie's surgery, then sighed. "Yeah, I'm glad he's going to be okay," she said, "but I don't know how he and his mom are going to handle all the bills. From what I hear, they're barely getting by as it is." Bell Ringer nodded thoughtfully, and Franny hurried off to wait on the rest of her tables. Since I hadn't had time to round up a busboy to replace Stevie, and really didn't want to replace him, the girls were bussing their own tables that day until we decided what to do. After the morning rush, Franny walked into my office. She had a couple of paper napkins in her hand and a funny look on her face. "What's up?" I asked. I didn't get that table where Bell Ringer and his friends were sitting cleared off after they left, and Pony Pete and Tony Tipper were sitting there when I got back to clean it off. "This was folded and tucked under a coffee cup," she said. She handed the napkin to me, and 3 $20 bills fell onto my desk when I opened it. On the outside in big, bold letters was printed, "Something for Stevie." "Pony Pete asked me what was that all about," she said, and so I told him Stevie and his mom and everything. I told him all about that. And Pete looked at Tony, and Tony looked at Pete, and they ended up giving me this. She handed me another paper napkin that had "Something for Stevie" scrawled on the outside. 2 $50 bills were tucked within its folds. Franny looked at me with wet, shiny eyes, shook her head, and said simply, "Truckers." That was 3 months ago. Today is Christmas, the first day Stevie is supposed to be back to work. His placement worker said he's been counting the days until the doctor said he could work. But it didn't matter at all that it was a holiday. He called 10 times in the past week, making sure we knew he was coming, fearful that we had forgotten him or that his job was in jeopardy. I arranged to have his mother bring him to work, met them in the parking lot, and invited them both to celebrate his day back. Stevie was thinner and paler, but couldn't stop grinning as he pushed through the doors and headed for the back room where his apron and busing cart were waiting. "Hold up, Stevie, not so fast," I said. I took him and his mother by their arms. "Work can wait for a minute. To celebrate you coming back, breakfast for you and your mother is on me." I led them towards a large corner booth at the rear of the room. I could feel and hear the rest of the staff following behind as we marched through the dining room. Glancing over my shoulder, I saw booth after booth of grinning truckers empty and join the procession. We stopped in front of the big table. Its surface was covered with coffee cups, saucers, dinner plates, all sitting slightly crooked on dozens of folded paper napkins. "First thing you have to do, Stevie, is clean up this mess," I said, trying to sound stern. Stevie looked at me, then at his mother, then pulled out one of the napkins. It had "Something for Stevie" printed on the outside. As he picked it up, 2 $10 bills fell onto the table. Stevie stared at the money, then at all the napkins peeking from beneath the tableware, each with his name printed or scrawled on it. I turned to his mother and said, "There's more than $10,000 in cash and checks on that table, all from truckers and trucking companies that heard about your problems. Merry Christmas." Well, it got real busy about that time. and it got real noisy, with everybody hollering and shouting, and there were a few tears as well. But you know what's funny? While everybody was busy shaking hands and hugging each other, Stevie, with a big smile on his face, was busy clearing all the cups and dishes from the table. The very best worker I ever hired. Peace be with you.